Hello everyone and welcome back to the Great Book of Grudges. My name is Nathan and in this video we're going to look at the changes to the Ogre Kingdoms, the Ogre Hall if you will. There's a few things coming in and what we're going to do is we're going to separate it into sections like we've done with the other videos, and if you want to see more of this, I'll also be streaming on twitch.tv/thegreatbookofgrudges. There's a bunch of things going on. This is like the third video today, I think. Might be the second. I don't know at this point. I still have to sort out my schedule. But let's just jump right in. So, there's been some minor changes for Greasus, and we're going to focus on him right now. So, if we look towards the faction effects, has access to Tyrant's Demands, enabling special campaign actions. That's a brand new mechanic. Diplomatic relations, plus 20 with Ogre Kingdoms. Income from trade tariffs, plus 50%. And for the Lord effects, we have income from sacking and looting settlements, plus 50% for Lord's army. And everybody has their price, a ability that you have with our boy here. There's been some slight changes to his unique skill line. It's the idea of just updating a few of the skills to bring them more in line with, well, pretty much all the reworks that have been happening lately in the lifespan of Warhammer 3, thanks to Frodo Decay. So, yeah, I mean, it's not too bad. You've still got the camp extension. Some of the stuff that was just back then for Iron Guts is now for pretty much every single ogre, which is really good. It's not the biggest change. I think it's not going to be noticed by a lot of people, but the idea is just bringing everything up a little notch. The ogres have desperately needed some help here, so it makes sense to be able to do that. But don't you worry, that's not his unique changes. That would be pretty sad now, wouldn't it? The actual new mechanic for Greasus is Tyrant's Demand, which is very, very similar to the mechanics that Karl Franz has, but it's a little bit different, obviously different types of effects, and it's all based on treasury because you're going to have a fair amount of treasury, actually. I was playing a bit with Greasus today, and you rack up cash really, really quickly. Or you spend it a lot if you're going to be building up your minor settlements, but it's all really good effects. Like getting a purchase of a settlement is pretty cool for 25,000, or just giving your army a extra movement. You can actually literally just get your movement replenished fully. So if you were just off from killing an enemy faction, there you go. It's got cooldowns naturally. There's cooldowns of like 25 turns, 10 turns, and so on. But it's a system that adds a little bit of flavor to him. I think it's a pretty good way of interpreting how Greasus Goldtooth works in the lore. So yeah, it's not bad. I think the main thing is it's a small update, but it's an effective one. Okay, Skrag the Slaughterer now, and once again a few minor changes. So for faction effects, gains powerful rewards based on number of active offerings to the maw. Meat gained from battles plus 10% for all armies. Campaign movement range plus 10% for all armies. Lord and Hero recruit rank plus 2 for Slaughter Masters and Butchers. When it comes to Lord effects, we've got the following. Offers to the Great Maw cost minus 50%. Attribute, Devastating Flanker for Gorges, Lord's army. Upkeep minus 20% for Saber-Tusk packs, Blood Vultures, Yetis, Thundertusks, and Stonehorns, and Gorger units in Lord's army. So if you ever want a lot of monsters, yeah, it's going to be the perfect time. And finally, ability Gorger Onslaught. Now, there is a bit more to talk about because his unique skill line has been updated a little bit too. Nothing too big, but essentially just more captives, more spell intensity, a few changes here and there, which I think is quite nice. Also, the fact that the maw is now ridiculously cheap. I think that is a new one. It's hard to tell. I haven't played the ogres in a decent amount of time, and when I did play the ogres, I mostly played Greasus, and that's just purely because I really enjoy Greasus Goldtooth. The main thing to know is that all the Lord and Hero options, even the generics, have had updated skill lines where applicable. We'll be talking about that a little bit later. It's nice to see the ogres getting attention. I've said this many times, and I'm pretty sure that the community echoes the same sentiment. The ogres always felt like they weren't really there for Warhammer 3. Like, their launch was just bleh. I think that's probably the best way of saying it, bleh. But yeah, they're better now. So Skrag's unique mechanic is actually tied to the offers to the Great Maw. This is something that every ogre faction is going to have access to. You spend food on different armies and you can get different bonuses. These can be switched on whenever you want. You can actually turn on all 4 consecutively or one by one if you wish, but it'll take a turn cooldown to be able to then allow it to turn off, right? Which is fine. In most cases, it's not really that big of a deal. You're going to get meat so quickly, it's not really much of a problem. It just depends on your playstyle. Now, what attaches to it is faction-wide bonuses. So just like Epidemius, you got a little bit of a tally up there, and this is exclusive to Skrag, where you can get powerful bonuses, in all honesty, just for having active bonuses already. I know, it's bonusception, but it's pretty cool. I mean, when you get to the end, it's Winds of Magic cost minus 25% for all spells, for all armies. Keep in mind that, obviously, the spells for the Law of the Great Maw are quite expensive, so being cheaper means that you're going to be able to throw off a lot more magic, more meat gained from battles and army ability. You'll also be able to get more uses for your faction leader abilities for Skrag. It's a pretty good way of keeping aggressive and just having a shit ton of Slaughter Masters and Butchers, which I think a lot of people are going to do when you play with him now. He is this spellcaster-focused faction. Like before, meat is a key resource, but it is actually a lot better now. No matter how you get into combat, there's usually 9 out of 10 ways to get meat. So sacking, occupying, raising, general combat, yeah, you're going to be getting meat all the time. It's great because you're going to be using this for a lot of key features for the Ogre Kingdoms. One of those being your new version of Hunger, which is very similar to that of the Bloodletting for Khorne. So as you've got meat, you'll be able to get more bonuses. It doesn't mean as badly as Khorne takes it. Like, it's still slow for Khorne to be able to get those bonuses. With the Ogres, it's very, very quick, and you can just keep stockpiling meat if you so wish, so that's no problem there. The bonuses are very, very good. You can even get upkeep reductions there. If you wait too long, you will get some negatives, but in general sense, you're always going to be near the top as long as you play an aggressive campaign, and it's not that difficult with the Ogres because that's what they do best. There is, of course, a rather hefty technology rework. Taking advantage of the system implemented with the Forge of the Chaos Dwarfs, you now have 2 separate trees, Tribes and Hordes. Tribes is centered around administration, some buffs for your faction, extra growth, campaign movement range, extra camps. This is where you'll be getting a lot more camps, but also some other stuff that will help you in combat, like cooldown for spells, income from raiding. There's a few bits and bobs here, but this is your generalized section, and I think it's pretty good. It's in the style of like a hut, as you can see, right? Which is not really that surprising. But in general, it's quite quick to go around it. I'm going over all of them right now, so if you want to stop at any of them, you can. It's generally the one that you're going to want to use more if you've got like bonuses that you need to get, like extra control, extra growth. Growth can still be kind of important if you're building up in the Mountains of Morn. You're incentivized to build in the mountains more, and then everything else is more destroy it for the meat and use your camps to kind of litter the area. But we'll talk about the camps in a little bit anyway. It's a pretty good one. I think it's a nice interpretation. The technology changes have been quite good lately, and that's really important, especially when looking towards the future, because like the Slanesh one needs a change, and I think also the Tzeentch one too. But the second one is Hordes. And Hordes works in 2 sections. It's stylized as a Stone Horde's head, as you can imagine. The left-hand side focuses very, very heavily on your Ogre units themselves. So your Bulls, your Mournfang Riders, anything that has an actual Ogre. You're likely going to be prioritizing that one because it's going to be the one that you're going to be using the most units for. Especially since meat isn't going to be draining you that badly anymore. You're going to be able to have quite a lot of troops running in different armies, which, believe me, has made me enjoy the Ogres a lot more. Like, oh my god, I hated the Ogres on launch, so it's nice to see a big change coming in. The second section is going to focus around a little bit of everything. A few Noblars, some monsters. The idea here is everything that gets attached to your Ogres. The stuff that you will normally wait a little bit for. Your Giants, your Yetis, though I would say Yetis are really good right now, so you're probably going to want to pick them up as fast as possible, depending on your playstyle. It's a good change overall. Once we're at this point, I'm just going to say, Creative Assembly, you've forgotten about Norska. So maybe you need to go back a little bit. Sorry, I just have to remind them sometimes. But now let's talk about the camp rework, because there's a big change here. First up, camps no longer cost any upkeep. You'll still have to pay to purchase the troops, but they won't drain your resources. Secondly, you've also got access to stances, so it's encamping or raiding. They all have different things, so getting more control or growth for the province, so you can boost up your own territories. Raiding will be taking cash from enemies, the usual stuff, so it's like getting an extra provincial bonus. Your camp tyrants are also going to be kind of like proper lords. They have a skill line, you can level them up. They can't move, but you can get loads of bonuses there, which will allow you to boost them up, and also the troops that they have as their garrison, just in case you've decided to put a camp in a particularly dangerous area, as you can relocate your camps. Overall, camps feel a lot better now. The building is still the same for them. These are going to be your major settlements, however, so keep that in mind. You have access to no other major settlements. Your camps will be your big ones, and you do get a lot of bonuses. A lot of different things, actually. I'm actually quite happy with this redesign because it's functionally the same, but there's a lot of additions for it. You can also reduce the upkeep for own armies around the area, generate more meat. Meat is going to be so important because what you might have noticed here is it doesn't cost treasury. Meat is going to be the big thing with regards to building up your camp. Don't worry, it's not that difficult to get meat. I've said that before. Some people might get into a bit of a panic there, but generally you're going to be upgrading stuff at a pretty normal pace, even compared to that of normal factions which only rely on treasury. I'm only saying that because I did see a little bit of concern when the Creative Assembly blog came out, and some people were like, oh no, this is going to slow down a campaign, but it's not, trust me. This is because while your armies are out there doing their thing, you're going to be gathering a lot of meat, and you can get meat sent to your camps. This is through a system here, it's just at the bottom of your tab, and yeah, it'll cost you a little bit of treasury, but you can send meat from armies all the way up to camps. It's very important to note, however, that camps cannot send to other camps, and you can't send from camps to armies, which I find a little bit disappointing, and I know I'm not the only one. A few of us have provided feedback regarding that, so hopefully that changes down the line, because it would be very, very helpful if everyone had access to sending meat around. It's kind of like the Chaos Dwarfs. This is a nice system, though. It can be improved, but it's a good system. For those wondering, yes, your normal settlements are still just minor settlements. You have access to pretty much all the hero choices and a decent amount of your rosters. Use your normal settlements as income, so you can build up a building for infrastructure, usually income, a protection building, because you might need a little bit of an extra garrison, and then whatever you want for the fourth slot. There's a lot of room, there's a lot of mountains. You can build in places that aren't mountains, by the way. It's just some locations aren't going to be great for you. But if you're playing as Greasus, for example, in the Mountains of Morn, you have so much territory to just make an infrastructure empire. It's insane. Continuing with camps, if you want to move them around, well, you can pack them up. It's that simple. You've got the option there just to pack up the camp, and the army / the camp will disappear. Don't worry, it doesn't mean that you're going to be starting off from zero again. I know a lot of people are a bit panicky about that, but you're going to get camps in loads of different locations, especially as you start getting more and more of them. They'll just pack up, go away, and then you can build a new one afterwards, which, if you've waited enough time, well, yeah, there's a bit of a cooldown. You can just bring back that camp, and all the units that were recruited with it will come back, including the buildings too. There's even a lovely UI there that you can switch around and you can check what has what building, what has what units. It's awesome, actually. When you're building up a new camp, it's pretty random, but you're going to be building up loads of camps, so it doesn't really matter. Offerings to the Great Moor is a rework to an old mechanic, and it's just so much nicer. The UI is absolutely lovely. These are faction bonuses directly to each of your armies, and you can click one to activate as many as you want. As long as you've got the food to provide for it, you're fine. You can turn on as many as you want per turn. There is a 1-turn cooldown to remove them, though, which, I mean, isn't too bad. And overall, yeah, much better bonuses. Everything just feels better than the old system, which was just extra mass, I think, and a bit of speed, and yeah, it wasn't great. Let's be honest, a lot of the Ogre Kingdoms wasn't great. Now it looks like they've had some really passionate devs to go, okay, let's fix it up once and for all, because it's very likely that the Ogres aren't really going to get other DLC in the future, which is understandable considering that they're functionally done. An FLC character every now and then would be good, though. You've still got army abilities like pretty much every other Warhammer 3 race. The abilities are the same, there's been a few changes, but very, very brief. The big change is how you actually gain the points to be able to use these abilities. It's not about charging into fleeing enemies or killing fleeing enemies now. It's about charging. So if you play ogres and you like to cycle charge, that's going to be your main bread and butter to be able to get the direct damage, to be able to get the extra buff, or the heal. Just charge in, and depending on how many ogres you have, it fills up very quickly, actually. It's not too bad, and it'll be a lot faster once you start getting some Mournfang in, which can cycle charge quite well, or some Crushers, which can charge straight through a line into another unit. Same thing as the Thundertusk and the Stonehorn. Overall, I think that the ogres are going to feel a lot better in battle because of this. Lovely changes like this. Small changes are very nice. Alright, we can talk about some new stuff right now. So, naturally, you have a new Lord option, the Paymaster, and it's pretty decent, surprisingly. I wasn't too sure what to think about it, because a Paymaster is very much in the same vein as your Cathayan Magistrates. It's there to buff, it's there to reduce a decent amount of upkeep, so if you want really cheap armies with technology, hunger, and then this, your armies can be really, really cheap. All the Ogre Lords have unique skill lines now, by the way. It's really, really good. We're going to be talking about that in a second. That's why I'm saying that they're in a pretty good spot. You also have access to big names because all generic Lords and Heroes now have access to big names. So you just have to do a certain few things, right? Like win a battle while being reinforced, or win a battle with 2,500 kills, which isn't really easy, depending on what you're fighting. If you're fighting Skaven, then yeah, it's going to be easy enough. And finally, and possibly the reason why I was pretty disappointed with the Ogres originally, we have access to the Bruiser, a melee-focused hero, which is going to be there to do a lot of damage and also support your spellcasters by being their protection. You've also got bonuses there because you can get character experience for the Accompanying Lord and Ward Save. You can get quite a few different abilities coming in. An ability known as where you're going to make them to make a unit unbreakable, some extra damage. These guys have a hand weapon and Iron Fist. So an Iron Fist is a ogre shield, but also kind of acts like a weapon too. And they do really good armor-piercing damage. So, yeah, I don't think anyone's going to complain about this. Now you finally have some good support. They can't be mounted. No ogres can be mounted just yet, unfortunately, well, barring the hunter. But the Bruiser comes in as an excellent support hero, and it can get Guardian. It's just baffling that it took so long, because I think a lot of people were wanting the Bruiser for a while. And like I said, the Lords and the Heroes have had updates, some of them getting unique skill lines, some of them getting a rework to their skill line. Some of the stuff remains the same, but a few other abilities and skills have been added in. Again, bringing the quality up for the Ogres much higher, which I think with this update, because remember that this Ogre rework, all the reworks that you're seeing, you don't pay for. But I think that with this update, and I can say this freely because it's not attached to the DLC, I think that this update will now justify the Ogres. If you've been holding out, if you came into Warhammer 3 a little bit later than everyone else, and if you've been wanting to buy the Ogre Kingdoms, this is the time to do so when this patch comes out, because the patch is going to actually make the base game DLC for the Ogre Kingdoms worth it, for Skrag and for Greasus, and I think that's quite important, because, oh my god, like I said, they were bad, bro. They were bad. Especially since now we have all the laws of magic with the Slaughter Masters and the Butchers. So you've got the Law of Death, the Law of Heavens, the Law of Beast, and the Law of the Great Maw. Obviously, you've got the Law of Fire with the Fire Belly too, so 5 laws of magic to play around with. More magic means more fun, means more customizing your armies, and just a lot more to play around with, which is really, really important for a faction which is kind of one-dimensional. Remember that the Ogre Kingdoms aren't really that stylized, because it's really just monstrous cavalry, monstrous infantry, and then huge monsters. And that's pretty much it, supported by some smaller monsters and a few Noblars, right? So the more that comes in to make them feel a little bit better is what's going to make them much more playable. The Ogres were very popular on the tabletop because they were easy to play, right? They were very one-dimensional, but it made them fun. In Total War, it's a bit different because there's so many things that can counter you, so you need whatever you can to kind of just throw it at them back. So far, we've seen a Ogre rework, a Khorne rework, and then in the previous DLC, we saw a rework for the Dwarfs, or 2 reworks for the Dwarfs, actually, a rework for Nurgle, and some changes to the Empire. It makes me very confident that when we start looking towards other races that desperately need some touch-ups, the Lizardmen, Norsca, Vampire Counts, and any others, it makes me confident that we're going to start seeing some good changes. This is good, and I hope Creative Assembly keep up this momentum with the quality of the content. I've been playing with the Ogre Kingdoms now for a few hours, post and between recording sessions. I've been needing a few breaks every now and then, and it does make them much more enjoyable. Comparing to my notes that I had to Warhammer 3's launch, like just the notes on the Ogre Kingdoms, not the game as a whole, because the game as a whole was pretty awful. it's apples and oranges. But let me know what you guys think in the comments below, and we'll start a bit of a discussion. This should be video 2 or 3 today, but if you've reached this moment, you know I am live on twitch.tv/thegreatbookofgrudges. Pop by. We can talk about the DLC, we can talk about the updates, we can talk about pretty much anything. There's a lot more content to come, and yeah, I'll see you all again very, very soon, guys. By this point, we haven't even hit the DLC content yet, so there's a lot to talk about. But it's nice, you know, it's been a while. It's been a hell of a drought. See you guys.